Hello, this is Douglas Robinson, and in this video, we're going to be looking at some new API methods that are going to be available in Cortex, which are going to return the same data as a couple of API methods available in Cherwell. So within Cherwell, for instance, if I hook up Cortex to our Cherwell instance and I try to retrieve the value from some saved searches, this is the data that we get out of Cherwell for querying for a saved search within Cherwell through Cherwell's API. So this is the JSON content we get back, and we get back things like a list of business objects with the public ID, def ID, rec ID, and then a list of fields, so on and so forth. Well, what we're going to be doing today is looking at how to get the same information from a Cherwell database after Cherwell's gone using Cortex. So the way that this is going to work within Cortex is you're going to be able to set up a data source for your Cherwell system. Within Cortex, there's a concept of any way that we're going to be reading data from either a system that's connected like locally that Cortex is directly attached to, or any external system Cortex attaches to, it's always going to be considered a data source, and there's going to be several different pieces of functionality that are tied to data sources. So anything that we can configure about how we're connecting to a particular system is going to be on this data sources screen. So for Cherwell, we have a Cherwell data source. You don't need to configure the Cherwell data source more or less to connect to Cherwell, since that's going to be done using a connection string within your app settings file for Cortex. But on this settings tab for Cherwell, we can configure how we want to authenticate to the Cortex API when we're reading data out of Cherwell. So right now we have a simple authentication key that you can include with your API requests to authenticate them. That way, not anyone can just ping this API and get data out of them. So I've got an authentication key here, which if you want to, you can generate that as any random GUID. I save this. Now, if I go to an API, a REST API client like this one here, I think this is a browser extension called yet another REST client. You can see I've got my, what would you call it? My endpoint for my local host, or my Cortex system is basically localhost slash API. Our Cherwell endpoint is always going to be Cherwell. So if you had a Cherwell system, your Cherwell endpoint would be back behind like your server name slash Cherwell API slash v1. And the point, everything after slash v1 would be the actual API endpoint. And in our case, everything after API slash Cherwell is going to be similar. So there's kind of two endpoints we're supporting right now, but really it's just going to be one, and it's whether you're sending information over as a name or as an ID, which is to get the results of a stored search. So I've got a query, or query, I guess it is a query. I've got a query here for getting the search results for the incident association, global scope with no scope owner for the search name, all assigned incidents. And my authorization header here, where is this? I need to add this manually because I don't want that value. So I've got my authorization header for how I'm going to authenticate this. And if I send this request, I get, boom, bunch of JSON that should be pretty much the same as what we're getting from Cherwell. We have one array of business objects with BizOb ID, public ID, reg ID, a list of fields. Now, the Cherwell API, at least on the version that I tested this on, it includes a placeholder for HTML values, but it always leaves them as null. So we've set this up just to make sure that we're not sending back insane amounts of data. We've set this up to be null, but it would be very easy for us to configure this to send back the HTML data if it's needed, but for now we have this as null. And that's basically it. If for some reason you needed to test this out without sending the authentication header, that's the wrong thing. Uh, you could uncheck this box, and then you can run this same request without that header. and get back the same information. But when that box is checked and there's a key that's required, I save this again. If I don't have an authentication header, and if it doesn't match, you will get back unauthorized.
Hey, last but not least, before you go, there's two things you should check out. They're going to be in the description below as links. We have a Discord server where you can ask all sorts of questions about any questions, you can give feedback, you can voice concerns, you can request certain things, or get more information about different things regarding Cortex and either current or upcoming features. Or you can talk to us on our weekly Cortex users group, which is every Tuesday at, I'm so glad Brian wrote 10 a.m. Pacific time, uh, because I'm not in Pacific time. It's a different time for me. I'm so glad it's on this page. But yeah, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we have a weekly 60-minute, 1 hour meeting where me and Brian get together and we will, honestly, if nobody shows up, we talk to ourselves. But if you show up, we're very happy to show you anything that you want to see about Cortex, talk about what you can do in Cortex either today, tomorrow, so on and so forth. Thanks for watching.